bit.
Okay, cool.
All right. Good evening, good morning, everyone. Caribou from Kenya. I'm here with Remy, and we're going to get started. As you guys probably know, we're pre-recording this so we can manage the time differences and the time zones. So, Remy, thank you for making the time to come out and be on Friday for Females, OSA Friday for Females.
Thank you so much, Tarika, and Habari from Kenya, from Nairobi, Kenya, and thanks for accommodating just the time difference. But I'm really excited to do this. So thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem. So I'm just gonna jump into it. So happy 2021, everyone. Now Remy and I, we know each other from Randolph-Macon Women's College, now Randolph College, and I wanted to know, how did our college prepare you for where you are now?
All right. It's been several years since we met in university, and I still am getting used to calling it a different name because I was so used to those 4 years of calling it RMWC. But
Yeah.
I have embraced the fact that it's Randolph College now, and I love it. So what would I say? One thing it did for me, I think the key thing our education at Randolph did was give me the perspective of an education outside of, first of all, where I grew up. So I'm from Kenya. My mother's from Kenya. My father is from Tanzania. We're a bit of a mix because I grew up in Ethiopia. That's where my parents were working. So
Oh,
Addis was home for a long time. And then East Africa was obviously our home region.
yeah.
And that's where I went to school. And so it was education is something my parents value very much, and we're five girls in the family. I'm the last one, but I was the last one to get out the door, and they just were very keen that they wanted all their children to at least have basic education, and much more so be able to get to the first degree, and then anything after that, you figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
So getting to Randolph was through the support I had of my very dedicated and loving parents, but it was also a chance to get a global education. It was a small liberal arts college, and it was all female at the time, and it was in a part of the U.S. that was also seemed, what can I say, convenient, because I do have some relatives in the U.S. And so Virginia was a good place, but more so than that, the liberal arts exposure, a chance to try out many different things, because in that school system in the U.S., you have an opportunity to explore it for the first 2 years. What is it that I really would like to do? So you get to sample some classes. You have a general idea. I always knew I wanted to go either the communication way or very differently the biology way. So I took courses in both. I had always thought I may end up in the public health space, and I thought that would marry the two together until I got to, I think it was second year botany, and I was like, nope, I have discovered that communication is the way to go for me. So just having that ability to try out different courses without the pressure of coming in knowing exactly what you're going to do. I think it gives that flexibility to say, maybe I came in thinking I want to do this, but because of the exposure to other courses and people and professors, you get to discover that, oh, perhaps I have a strength or several strengths in these different areas. So while I honed down my major to be communication, I ended up doing enough history classes, for example, to get a minor in history without trying. It just happened. I took enough credits, and at the end of the 4 years, it was like, oh, you've taken enough credits to actually say you have a concentration in history.
There you go.
I would say that. And then lastly, the exposure to also um, different students from different parts of the world. I think we had quite a robust international community at Randolph
We did.
Macon. So there was that as well. I had never met people from Jamaica before, for example, before I came to Randolph Macon, or Nepal. So it was just that kind of exposure. So the exposure, the flexibility, and the fact that it was a small liberal arts college, which was a good transition for me because I'd never been to the U.S. before that ever.
Wow. Well,
Mhm.
and I like the fact that you kind of highlighted on the fact that you don't necessarily need to have an idea of what you want to major in or minor in when you go to college. Like it can be an exploration. Like you don't need to know the rest of your life like when you go to college, like you can
Yes,
enjoy a little bit and then make that decision and it can change. I mean, like obviously you had two separate interests and then you went to one. So that's important for people who are going into college right now to understand like you don't have to be that decisive quite yet. You can take the time to learn and then there's opportunities where you can go to community colleges and then from there go to another college and that can also save money for those who need to save the money. So
absolutely. I would say that um, there are those people who they say from like 5 years old, I knew I wanted to do this and they pursue it, but not
mhm,
everybody's like that. Exactly what you said. There's some of us like I wasn't sure, but I knew I wanted to be a professional in something, but I wasn't 100% sure, and that was the benefit that the education gave me. And I do have a more liberal approach as well to education at times because I realize over time we're all very unique people. And, you know, I advocate strongly for those who are finishing high school as well. If you feel you need to take a gap year, there's
yeah.
that option as well. So, tied into what you were saying about community college, I believe in gap years. And for the reason of, I value self awareness very much.
Hmm.
And of course, when you're coming out of high school, you're still so young and you're still
Yeah.
discovering. But I think we can all develop self awareness to an extent at the different stages of life that we're in. And so, if taking the gap year or taking these days there's so many online free courses, if that's something you want to explore first, I always say why not. At the end of the day it's down to whoever is paying for your education, so that's a discussion you can have with your guardian, your parents, but um, I still feel it's time well spent, and then at the end of the day it's money well spent when you have a better idea as well that, yeah, university is for me and I want to pursue that.
Exactly. Well, I saw that you were a communications coordinator with Mothers to Mothers, which seemed like a very like innovative, unique organization. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely. So I worked with Mothers to Mothers for close to 4 years, and Mothers to Mothers is a nonprofit organization that was started in Cape Town. It was co-founded by Dr. Mitch Besser and oh my goodness, I have forgotten. Can we scrap that part? Can we start over?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, it can you can't scrap it, but try.
Oh my gosh, I've just gone blank. Anyway, it was founded in Cape Town, South Africa, and basically the aim of Mothers to Mothers was prevention of mother to child transmission of HIV, which is a very interesting topic. It has since grown to expand other areas, programmatic areas around maternal child health in the HIV space. However, what I would say is that prior to joining Mothers to Mothers, I didn't know that I was very ignorant. I didn't know that it was possible to actually prevent mother to child transmission, and it can be done with very simple interventions. So I'll
Hmm.
give this as an example. Within the African space, our public health systems are very stretched. And the majority of our populations have access to the public health systems because private healthcare, like anywhere in the world, private healthcare is expensive. And
Hmm.
so you find out, for example, you're a woman who has just found out she's pregnant, so she's gone to the health facility. Normally, I would say in Kenya, the standard is that they would like you to have at least 4 visits to your doctor when you find out you're pregnant, all the way through to when you actually deliver. But in a lot of cases, because of cost and because of just the different socioeconomic constraints that exist, you'll find a lady perhaps will not be able to make all those 4 visits in your typical lower income setting. So you go to the hospital, you find out you're pregnant, it's life changing. So for some people, it's the most amazing news in the world. For some people, it can be very shocking. So you're in one of those spaces. But then one of the tests that is mandated once you find out you're pregnant is an HIV test. So some people may know their status already, or they may
Mhm.
be finding out their status at that point. If it's negative, of course, that adds to then relief. But what happens when you find out that you're a young woman or a woman of childbearing age and you're either excited or in a panic that you're pregnant, and whatever case it is, you find out you're HIV positive on top of that. For a lot
Yeah.
of people, it's shocking news and it can seem like a death sentence, especially when awareness is not key. So, what Mothers to Mothers does is they have a model of mentor mothers or peer educators, and these women are based within the health facility at the time I was there. I know the program has evolved over time, but they're based at the health facility. So, you have gone to see the doctor, you've been given your diagnosis, you've been told, okay, we'll start you on ARVs, here you go, see you at your next visit, next person in line, please, because there's so many people who need to be seen by these clinical medical professionals. So what do? You've just received this shocking news. You're coming from any kind of family context. How do you explain it to your partner if you have one? How do you explain it to your family? It just comes with this whole myriad of other issues. And so what mentor mothers do is that once a woman is tested positive, she will then be referred to a mentor mother if Mothers to Mothers has mentor mothers at that health facility. And they used to try and target the most populated health facilities in different parts of the countries that it worked in. I was based in Kenya, but I coordinated communication for our Kenya, Uganda, and Malawi offices.
Oh, wow.
And it was a similar model. So a mentor mother then will come and spend time with you, take you to a room, give you your privacy, and then introduce herself and just basically say, look, I was once in your shoes. So the mentor mothers literally walk the journey with this mother who's finding out for the first time that she's HIV positive. If she's HIV negative, you will still be referred to a mentor mother just on ways to remain negative. And that
Mhm.
will be just one follow up. But for the rest who then are positive, they will walk this journey with you so that if you start your antiretrovirals, if you follow very simple interventions, the chances of transmission are actually less than 2% from mother to child.
Mm.
And this is through the journey of pregnancy, it's through the journey of childbirth, and it is up until the first year of life for the child. Then you can say, after the final test that the child takes, you can safely say that this child now is negative. They will offer psychosocial support. They will offer peer classes. They will offer, COVID has changed things a lot. So I know there was a transition to digital, but this is well after I left. So basically, it's somebody to walk that journey with you. And to me, that was precious because if you have no intervention at all, the chances are as high as 40% that you will transmit the virus to your unborn baby.
Yeah, I
So taking
mean,
it from 40% to under 2%,
it's
that's a lot.
amazing. Yeah.
With very simple interventions for um, a wide population of mothers.
Yeah, and I think it's really neat that it's mothers who have already gone on that path. It's kind of hard for you to be a mom and be that peer or that role model if you haven't experienced it yourself, because it's kind of like, well, you haven't gone through what I've gone through. So it's nice that, I mean, you can't really do a psychosocial unless and be like, I can understand when you really can't.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly.
I like that component, is that they've already experienced it and gone through that whole process, and they themselves are successful with kids who are healthy and living successfully, and so they can be like, look, I'm on the positive end and you can be too. So it looks like, it sounds like it's an excellent model to follow by.
It is, and I really enjoyed working there and just seeing the difference it can make in a person's life. Exactly what you were saying. When you've been through certain circumstances, you've worn the shoe, so you know where it pinches.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, so you go from mothers to mothers, and now you're the head of the content development with Kenya Airlines. So, how did you do that switch? How have you adapted? What are you doing differently to make sure you're succeeding and the company's succeeding, and why the change?
All right. So after Mothers to Mothers, I really enjoyed the role in communication, but I had also wanted to experience what it is to work for a company that's not necessarily a nonprofit. And
Mm,
so Kenya Airways was, I worked with the African Guarantee Fund first, but that was quite a short stint. It was 1.5 years, and it was a Pan African fund. I wanted to, so let me take it back. I, I, I finished my education, yes, and I came back home. And I've always felt strongly that Africa has so much potential, so much potential. We have a lot of issues, but we also have a lot of potential. And I feel that it's up to, we're a global community, but it's up to Africans to also find solutions and make a difference. And I wanted to align myself with a company or organization that's doing that from a non-profit perspective. So it's not dependent on donor funding.
mhm,
I enjoyed that space, but I wanted to see what else was out there that was looking at Africa's issues from perhaps, how would I say, from business, for example. And so that's when I joined African Guarantee Fund as a communication officer as well. And AGF basically seeks to alleviate or alleviate poverty in Africa, but by supporting small and medium enterprises. So now this was a whole different topic. SMEs in Africa are, apart from the informal sector, SMEs are the backbone of what keeps our economies going. And a lot of SMEs have difficulty, I would say, in raising finance or access to
mhm.
credit. Because to grow your business, every entrepreneur knows that either you save up and start, or you look for investors, or you go and get loans from the bank.
Yeah.
And so that's the getting access to formal credit is a pain point for a lot of small and medium enterprises in Africa. So AGF was coming in to basically support the SME sector through easing access to finance for them from financial institutions. And so it operates all over Africa, although the head office is in Kenya, and they have another subsidiary in West Africa. So to me, that just aligned with where I wanted my um, my career values at the time was like, can I find something that's looking at African issues from a different perspective? Then when it came to Kenya Airways, I so when I first came back, I worked in media for about 6 years for a print magazine, a lifestyle magazine for women. So I honed my skills in as much as I didn't study formal journalism. I honed my skills in the editorial space, and I actually enjoyed storytelling. So I think I would start by saying, overall, at heart, I am a storyteller. If somebody was to say, just summarize who you are, storytelling for me would be it. And that's something I discovered over time because obviously I'd studied communication and it seemed like the formal way to go. So yes, the PR, the media relations side has been there, but I actually discovered that I love writing, I love telling stories and capturing content in different ways. And so when Kenya Airways happened to be looking for this position, it really aligned well because I had missed and had been considering going back into the media when this position opened up. And basically, what would I say? It married the best of both worlds. So I wasn't going to be doing it for a media house, so I could be very biased because Kenya Airways is a brand that I've always admired, especially when I was with Mothers to Mothers and even working with AGF. We used to do quite a bit of travel, and there's uh, different airlines that serve the region here to different destinations, but we have a national carrier, which is Kenya Airways. And there's something to be said about being able to fly on your national carrier to different destinations, either around the country or the continent or even the wider globe. So I always used to have this, you've been, let's say, to a country in West Africa for a few days and, you're ready to come home. And when you get to the airport, you see the national carrier. And once I would step on board, there was always this sense of, wow, I actually feel like I'm home already. And
Yeah.
so that's what I admired about Kenya Airways as an outsider. And I just thought, okay, great brand, etc. It has had its issues over time, but there's nothing that can replace that feeling of boarding the plane either to go somewhere or come back on your national carrier. So that was a thing aside. But then when the position actually opened up, I thought, this marries the best of both worlds, and I would love to be able to play a role in telling Kenya Airways' story.
Wow, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, so
It
it takes
just
me back to
oh
storytelling, but it's
yeah.
for a brand that's and aligned again to a brand that's looking at how to, because the overall purpose of Kenya Airways is the sustainable development of Africa. It's an
Yeah.
airline, yes, but the purpose is the sustainable development of Africa because it exists. And so it aligns very much to
What you're doing.
what what I'm doing.
That's awesome. That's so great to hear. Well, I'm going to take it another direction now. So you're a mom, you do some great things in your community and your work, but at the end of the day, do you manage your time?
Well, we know how that went over
Yeah.
the weekend.
I know
So
it's not easy. It is hard, but
yeah.
like but you've managed it beautifully, or at least you handle it well. So, what's your secret?
Oh, thank you. So, correct. I am a mother to a 10-year-old boy named
Mm-hmm.
Isaac. And I'll see if I can pop up his picture. But yes, he's now 10 years old. I'm a solo parent, so that adds a different dimension to it.
Yeah.
Um, and I know it sounds so cliche, so cliche, but he's an amazing boy. And my journey in life, I wouldn't be who I am or molded to be who I am at the moment if he wasn't part of it. Um, One thing I would say is that uh, parenthood, we can prepare for it as much as possible, and I completely advocate preparing for it as much as possible. But sometimes life doesn't work out that way. So what do you do? I would say that I have a really strong support system, and that's why being in Nairobi helps a lot. A support system through my other family members, through extended family members, and that really makes a difference
Mm-hmm.
because time can be short for a lot of things. Time can be so short.
Yeah.
So having that support system to me is key. I will bring up the issue of faith. I really believe in having what has worked for me. I will not necessarily advocate for it for everybody, but what has worked for me is also just having a faith system as a Christian and having the support of now my community around my faith as well.
That's
That has
great.
made the difference. And then last but not least, having great friends. Technology has made it so much easier to stay in touch with friends from long ago who are no longer, either are still in the US or we parted ways from high school, but technology has brought us back together. So I would say that. I would say a great support system. I would say faith for those who feel that faith is a major part of their lives, and great friends.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that it helps to have a community, right? So,
Oh my gosh, it takes a village. It really does take a village.
yeah, I
And
could.
just an aside, I've remembered her name, beloved co-founder of Mothers to Mothers, Robin Smalley. I don't know
Uh,
how I blanked. I think I will blame it on the time. So it was co-founded by Dr. Mitch Besser and Robin Smalley.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, who was or is your greatest inspiration?
Hmm. Um, so many different people. I would say on the family side, I'll be very cliche and biased. My parents are and always have been a really great inspiration to me. Sometimes when I look at them and I'm like, you raised 5 children, like how did you do it? And hold down jobs and go
You're
to
like,
school
you're
and all
like,
of that.
yeah, you're like, I have one and it's hard, and you raised five.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm like, whoo, you suddenly have this new respect
Yeah.
for them. So I would say first and foremost, I draw a lot of inspiration from both my parents. And they're both in their late 70s. So very blessed to have them around. They live in Tanzania, but they come to Nairobi quite often.
Hmm.
But having them around, having them healthy, it's something I don't take for granted. But I would say after that, and it would be interesting. She's she is well known in the publishing circles. Her name is Kanye Tlomo, And she used to be the publisher of a magazine called Destiny. So she was the first, if I'm not mistaken, she was the first Black news anchor for the South African Broadcasting Channel at a very young age. And she was also the first Black editor of True Love magazine, South Africa, which is quite a huge publication there. So she did those two jobs. I first found out her story when I was looking at an old Reader's Digest several years ago, gosh, over 10 years ago. And at the time, she had she got married. She got a divorce. She has two kids. She got remarried much later on, but she then was posted out with, I think, the tourism department of the government and lived in France for a while. And then she got accepted into Harvard.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was during her time at Harvard, doing the MBA program, that she got the idea for this magazine and sort of this business empire to empower women, South African women. It ended up inspiring me. So she moved back to South Africa and basically started the magazine. So
That's
the magazine
amazing.
ran for many years and it then went into different areas of business. Unfortunately, I think it was 2019 or 2020, it finally quote unquote went bust. So they had to sell it to somebody else. But just her journey alone, regardless of what happened with the magazine, I don't know what her plans are for now. I'm talking like I know her, like I have her on speed dial, but I'm not seeing news around what her next plans are. But I did see when I was recently in Johannesburg that the magazine is back. I found an August edition being sold in one of the supermarkets, so I bought it. But it has a new publisher, new everything.
Mm,
But I would love to meet her. And just, I love stories around challenges and failure and how
yeah.
people bounce back from that. For me, that's the success. Like, in fact, I love it when I hear that, oh, this didn't work out for me, or this didn't really quite work out as planned. And so, how did you overcome it? That's what I
Yeah.
want to know.
Well, that's where you learn, right? Like, I mean, if
Mm,
you constantly succeed, it's like you don't really understand when things are hard, like what that means anymore. But if you have those challenges and you step beyond them, it's like, oh my gosh, like you become stronger every time. And then you're able to help others in that same capacity or just grow as an individual. Like you were talking about self-reflection. Well, those moments are that moment of pause to self-reflect, so it's like, okay, how did I grow, what can I learn, what can I gauge, what do I do, what do I not do in the future, and it's those moments that help mold you in that way.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
So yeah, so she would be one of those people.
awesome. Well,
Mm,
I'm gonna have to look up that magazine.
it's called Destiny.
Destiny, yep. Well, I'm gonna
Yeah.
end with these questions. What are characteristics of a good leader or a good supervisor in your opinion?
Okay, so in my opinion, you need to be, you need to have two sides to you. When I was at Mothers to Mothers, we had a director, a country director for a few years, and she's one of the few people who I felt really got that balance right between focus and firmness and heart. And where I currently work, one of the departments also has someone similar. So being firm, but also being human. So I feel, to me, that's where I would want the two to meet, because you need to be able to think strategically in your role, but you also need to be able to understand people or work with people if you're leading people. You
Hmm.
have to um, really, at the crux of it is you have to understand your team, get to know them. One thing I used to do was those sort of what do you call them? I don't want to say, not like a personality sort of aptitude. What are your, have people just do an assessment and
Hmm.
then from there break it down and see, okay, you don't box someone in according to that, but what does it tell you about how the person likes to work or what challenges they have? And you can have that in mind. So I would say definitely knowing your thing. So knowing your profession, gaining the knowledge in it as much as possible. We're out of university, but it doesn't mean that you stop learning. There's articles
Yeah.
that you can read, there are books that you can read, websites that you can go to. So staying knowledgeable, but also understanding people and developing yourself to work with people, because it's not always the easiest thing. It's not. And then, how would I put this? Knowing that your team is there and they deserve to be treated with dignity. I would want to be treated the same way as well within the people that I report to, but I would want to extend that to people who report into me. So, can you ensure that whatever it is you're doing as a team, people still come into work every day or leave work every day with their dignity intact? So,
Yeah.
things may not be going according to plan all the time. Tough discussions need to be had, but at the end of the day, can someone walk away and say, I feel like my dignity was intact after I dealt with, or was part of Rehema's team or worked with Rehema?
Yeah.
I feel I have my own places to, sometimes I'm very much heart over the objective stuff. So for me, that's the area that I would want to learn from people and grow in that area. But I think for the most part, I have always tried to lead with keeping in mind that it's people's dignity that needs to remain intact.
Well, if they're happy, that's all them. At the end of the day, they'll work hard if they feel like they're succeeding and they're growing as an individual, and if they can wake up every day and say, I'm happy to be at work.
Exactly, and part of a larger purpose around the organization.
Yeah.
You can see what your role is actually contributing to on a strategic level, whatever the strategic objectives might be, but also working within a team that you feel like, yeah, I do feel like I come and I work my butt off, but it's
It's
worth it.
paying off.
Yes.
Well, again, Remy, Asante Sana, which means thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. It was great hearing what you're doing and the wonderful things and getting some insight from you.
Karibu sana Tarika. Karibu is your welcome, as you very well know from your time here. But thanks for the opportunity. And I'm excited to see what other conversations you'll be having.
Thank you. And
Okay.
for anyone who wants to join OSA Friday for Females, just send me a message.